.75, 738 with 8. .85.84 with 9.
Two H&K pistols, very much similar in appearance, but very different pistols. We're going to talk about them and may even decide that one is a little bit better than the other, at least in my taste. Stick around. I want to welcome you to Rider's Range while we take a look at the H&K P30SK and the H&K VP9SK. We're going to talk about them briefly. We're also going to shoot them, and I may at the end, or I may not. Depends on how this video goes. Pick a winner, at least in my opinion. The P30 has been around for a while. I think it was introduced somewhere around 2006 from H&K. By the way, H&K was actually founded as a company back shortly after World War II, and has had a number of innovations. The polymer frame, of course, is one of their hallmarks, as well as the polygonal rifling. But the P30 has been around for a while, and the SK in H&K vocabulary means SK for subcompact. So both of these are the subcompact type pistols. The P30 is a double action, by the way. Before we go any farther, I will show that both of these pistols are completely unloaded, and nothing in either magazine. So from here on out, I'm not going to bother to show that unloaded, because you know they are. Alright, and this one needs a little support to keep it on the right angle. So there's a whole bunch of different variations of the P30. Variation V0 through V4, depending on the type of action. But this is a hammer-fired gun, and you can get it with a decocker. This one has the LEM trigger, means the law enforcement modification trigger, and it's not a modification to the gun, but it's a specific trigger designed for law enforcement. We're going to talk more about that here in just a minute. The VP9 series came in somewhere around, I think it was introduced around 2014, so about 8 years newer than the P30 series. And this is a striker-fired gun, not a hammer-fired gun, as you can see by the striker indicator here in the back of the frame. They look very similar, however they're not. In one of my previous videos, we did one on the P30 and one on the VP9 introduction when I first got those. And I mentioned in those videos that, at least I mentioned in the VP9 video, that the VP9SK, even though it looks very similar to the P30SK, does not fit in the P30 holster, so I had to go out and get new holsters for it. Things they do have in common, however, are magazines. The 10-round magazine, actually, there is a 10-round flush magazine that it comes with. The P30, by the way, came with 2 magazines. The VP9SK came with 3, because that is the VP9SK LE Law Enforcement Edition, and we'll talk about some of the differences on that when we get through it. But the main thing is it comes with 3 10-round magazines, but you can get a 10-round flush fit, which doesn't give you a lot of grip. And a 10-round with an extension on it does not increase the capacity any. However, you can also use the 13-round, which on the front is about the same length as the 10-round, but it does give you 2 additional rounds. And you can even use the 15 or 17 round with a sleeve on it. So complete interchangeability of magazines between the 2 pistols. So as I mentioned, the VP9SK is the LE model, and that's because it has tritium night sights on it, whereas the P30 just has luminescent sights. Now you expose these to light, and they will stay illuminated for quite a while. Not quite as effective, obviously, as the tritium night sights, but close. You'll see, if you really look close, you'll see a difference besides the trigger tab on the VP9. You'll see that there's a slight difference in the shape and the length of the trigger guard. They look very similar, but actually when you put them side by side, I don't know if I show it here or not, but the trigger guard on the VP9 is just a hair longer than the trigger guard on the P30. Not quite sure why it's longer, but it's one of the design differences. And the rail in the front, both of these do, by the way, have a Picatinny rail. And the rails are still 3-slot rails, so those are about the same. Just a slight difference in length between the front of the trigger guard and the beginning of the rail. Shape of the frame is just a little bit different. And again, you got to look real close to see those differences. The forward cocking serrations on the VP9 are more numerous than they are on the P30. The rear cocking serrations are a little thinner and slightly curved on the P30, straighter and slightly thicker on the VP9. And the VP9 has something else that the P30 does not have, and that is these cocking ears on the back. You can see how they do protrude a little bit from the slide, and makes it a little easier to get a hold of these to run the slide. They are both ambidextrous pistols, in that you've got an ambidextrous slide stop lever on the VP9SK, completely ambidextrous slide stop on the P30, and these are the paddle magazine releases. I really like these. Some people got to have a push button, but just a little bit of time with these paddle release magazine release, I really like them. Fully ambidextrous, don't have to change anything around, and they work to me extremely well. Again, I said that they look similar, but they're not. They do both come with 3 back straps and 3 sets of side panels. But again, they're different. You can't interchange the back straps from the VP9 into the P30 or vice versa. But you can remove the back strap, it has the medium on there now, put on a large, put on a small. And when you pull the back strap off, you can also pull the side panels off. And you can put side panels with or without a larger hump on them. This would be the left side of both. This would be the large, this would be the small. The ones that are on there right now on both guns are actually the medium, which seems to work best for me. So I think H&K claims there are 27 different combinations of grip back straps and side panels that you can put on these guns. I haven't added them up, but I guess that makes sense with 3 back straps, 3 each of the side panels. It probably comes out to 27. But they don't fit the same holster. We already mentioned that. Slightly different profile. I've already shown that these are empty. It looks the same on the front, but there is a very slight difference. You can see that the distance between the recoil spring guide and the barrel is just a little bit greater. I haven't measured them, but you can see that it appears to be greater on the P30 than it is on the VP9. I have no idea why they changed that. Couldn't find any explanation on it. But just some more differences. The big difference in this, though, is striker fired. Now, the striker fired trigger on the VP9 comes in at a nice even. It's got a little bit of take up. Typical of polymer, does have the drop safety tab on the trigger, and you can feel just a little bit of a glitch there as it's overcoming the internal safety. And a very relatively short, nice tactile 3-pound 7-ounce trigger pull. Fairly short reset and nice take up again. I tell you, HK triggers are some of the best triggers on striker fired polymer guns that I have ever seen. The the P30, however, as I mentioned, is a hammer fired gun, and when you charge this gun, the hammer is down. You've got a fairly long but very light take up on the trigger, and the trigger it's got a little bit of creep right there, but it's not a heavy creep, and clean break at 4 pounds 4 ounces, so just a hair heavier than the VP9. However, if you end up having a misfire, then you have a full double second strike capability. I'm not a fan of that. If I have a misfire, I'm going to get the round out of there and get back in business. But if you do that, you got a long double action heavy pull that is better than 9 ounces, or 9 pounds rather, on this one. But in the real world, you press the trigger, you fire the gun. Now, as I release the trigger, come all the way back out to, well, let's do that with the run the slide on it. So as I release the trigger, you'll see the hammer go forward, and there's a reset point right there, and I can continue to fire with that 4 pounds 4 ounce pull. So again, it's sort of a double action. If I release it all the way, the hammer goes all the way in, but again, I've still got that take up that's moving the hammer but not moving the internal spring work on it. So nice safe pistol because it's hammer fired. You can determine the position of the hammer or condition of the gun by the position of the hammer, whereas the VP9 is a striker fired. You see that there's no striker indicator in there now. Cock the action and that striker's all the way back, and you can see as I'm working the trigger that striker does not move backward. So this gun is 100% cocked all of the time as long as there's a round in the chamber. This one is only is not cocked actually, and the hammer is forward, but again that LEM trigger is a very, very light pull, and I was hoping that that would be my favorite type of action, and it still might be. We'll talk more about it. Let's see, one more similarity though is weight. The P30 with a 10 round magazine and 10 rounds of 124 grain ammunition comes in at 29.8 ounces. The VP9, same ammunition, same magazine, comes in at about 5/10 of an ounce or half an ounce less at 29.3. So that gets us into shooting. You know, I love the trigger on the VP9. I'm getting used to the trigger on the LEM trigger on the P30. It is taking a little bit of getting used to, and accuracy-wise, I found that really they're both pretty close. And sometimes the P30 works better for me out to distances. Sometimes the VP9 works better. I guess it just kind of depends on the mood my hands and eyes and everything else are in on that particular day. Where the difference shows up though is when I'm running the plates, and I ran plates indoors and outdoors on a timer on these, and I was generally quicker on the plates with the striker fired VP9, and I struggled not just with the first shot, but with splits and getting accurate hits with that longer take up on the trigger on the P30. Can I get used to it? You know, if I was going to carry that P30 as a regular carry type gun, I'm sure that I could get used to that trigger and would really come to like it and work well with it in quick shooting. But it's going to take some work. Again, I'm a 1911 guy. I'm used to short, crisp triggers. I carried a Glock for 24 years. I'm used to Glock triggers. The LEM trigger is going to take some work. The VP9, therefore, at least in initial quick shooting, to me was a slight edge over the P30. One thing I found on both of these, though, is I have a tendency to ride the slide stop lever on both of these guns. It's a little more pronounced. It's a longer but also more pronounced slide stop. Sticks out a little bit more on the let's see if you can see in the camera here, a little bit more on the P30 than it does on the VP9, but even with the slightly lower profile one of the VP9, I still had a tendency to ride the slide stop lever on this, which means when I got to the end of a magazine, if I wasn't counting, the slide would not stay back because my thumb was riding the slide stop lever. Again, something I could overcome if I were to make it a practice of carrying either of these guns. But in the meantime, I really, really, really wanted to like the P30 and the LEM trigger, and I could get to like it if I spent a lot of time with it. However, if I'm just going to have a gun to occasionally carry and be comfortable with, the VP9 is much more natural for that. I like the customization capabilities of the grip on both of them. I like the accuracy of both of them, and really, HK triggers are still some of the best. Really like the striker fired. Like the concept of the LEM trigger. Now they do make this also in a traditional double action with a unique decocker on the back of the slide, which is, I don't have one. In fact, I've never shot one, but I think that would be an interesting double action only. Although I'm personally not a fan of double action first shot, single action second. It takes a lot of training to be able to make that transition between the heavy double action first shot and the light single action second shot, and I've seen far too many negligent or unintended second shots just because of that transition. With a LEM trigger, you don't have to worry about it. Every time you work the trigger, it is going to be the same. And again, at 4 pounds 4 ounces, that is just not a bad trigger. And again, double action safe. I'm gotta like it. All right, probably not quite so a quick overview of the P30SK and the VP9SK. Your mileage may vary. You may prefer one over the other. I'm guessing that most people are going to prefer the striker fired. And my main complaint on the striker fired is the fact that it is 100% cocked, no safety. Yes, I know the safety is the trigger finger, keep it off the trigger, and the gun is safe. However, I'm willing to bet that 99.9% of the people who carry a fully cocked, no safety striker fired pistol would not carry a fully cocked, no safety double action revolver with the hammer back cocked all the time, which is really what you're carrying with a semi-automatic pistol. And I'm going to say to them, keep your finger off the trigger, and a cocked revolver is just as safe. And of course, that's something most people don't think about. That's why I still like the hammer. That's why I still like my 1911s. But I really wanted to get used to, or wanted to like, the hammer fired LEM trigger on the P30SK, and I'm still going to work with it some more. Will it become my carry gun? Will it replace my staccato? Yeah, probably not, but hey, never say never. So, two guns, very similar, very different, and I do like them both. They have slightly different purposes, or at least slightly different functions for the purpose. You got to pick the one that you like, and man, what a tough choice. All right, I probably went longer than I intended, which is not unusual for our comparison videos on this channel, but I appreciate you sticking with me, and thanks so much for dropping into Rider's Range.